This next session is about unlocking blockchain for government. And I think that this is a timely and an apposite discussion. I think it won't be beyond most people to appreciate the macro conflict and volatility that we are experiencing. We have a war going on, which I don't think anyone really expected at the beginning of this year. We've got a great degree of macro instability, possibly exacerbated by the war in the food supply chain, energy costs, and of course with UST, for all of you, crypto watchers last week, I don't think that a synthetic derivative under the name of a stablecoin has really helped the community out any, but we're not talking about that today. So I'm actually delighted to be comparing this panel because as I left things in October with the OECD, who do quite a bit of research on the government's role in blockchain, in October, the conclusion from the research was there's not really that much being materially done. And I think we've got some distinguished panelists today that are going to start to blow the covers off of that and give us an indication of some of the material things that are actually going on with blockchain in government to the benefit of society. And so I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in. I think questions, particularly with this esteemed group, will be popular. So we'll get through a couple of questions and then open it up to the floor. But Kairat, can I start with you, please?
Yes, thanks. My name is Kairat Kaliyev. I represent Astana International Financial Center in Kazakhstan and responsible for tech development.
Eva?
Thank you. So I'm a Vice President of the European Parliament. I'm responsible mainly for technology and strategy for innovation. I worked a lot on blockchain back in 2015 and still working on blockchain, AI, and emerging technologies.
Daniela?
My name is Daniela Barbosa. I'm the Executive Director of the Hyperledger Foundation, and I also serve as the General Manager at the Linux Foundation for blockchain, healthcare, and identity.
And Jayesh?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jayesh Ranjan. I work for the government in a province in India, which is called Hyderabad, Telangana. And there are 28 provinces in India. And today we enjoy a very strong reputation of being one province which has rolled out lots of projects within the government system using emerging technologies, including blockchain. And I'll be sharing some examples as we go by.
Right. So let us sequentially kick off. And Kairat, let's carry on the discussion we started before the panel, particularly in Kazakhstan, but not excluded to Kazakhstan, with what you're seeing going on in blockchain and its role in government. Give us an idea of some of the things that you think are happening right now that are material, particularly the macroeconomic circumstances that we're foreseeing.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of blockchain and digital assets overall, so Kazakhstan starting find ways of regulating digital assets, and so in our financial center we have separate regulator and based on common law jurisdiction, and that's why so we try to find flexible ways to regulate it and create a sandbox. Sandbox approach allows to, let's say, moderate each project and working with digital assets, etc., and mitigate most of risks. Also, our central bank is more conservative, but in terms of, for example, allowing banks to work with digital assets, they are now agreed to work with stock exchanges, for example. And last year we launched a pilot, and this year we expect several crypto exchanges to enter to Kazakhstan. It was also forced by demand from mining. Crypto mining industry, which Kazakhstan was involved for last several years, a lot, and I think that it's the first part. It's concerning digital assets and regulation. Another part is blockchain itself, because a lot of blockchain projects running now in Kazakhstan with, for example, our telecom company, national telecom company, as I know, with Hyperledger, Kazakh Telecom, and also we have government tested some projects like registration of lands, for example, etc. But most of them are pilots, not working like for wider audience. And I believe that this blockchain technology, which allowing most of working with trust, yeah, and allow most people to be involved and see transparency, etc., will force the projects like this one. Another projects of our central banks is CBDC. Of course, last year they launched a pilot, and we believe that this year they are going to present what they have done and where they're moving. But I think it's a good side too.
Right, and so in summary, the rubber is hitting the road in Kazakhstan in the financial services sector, where we're focused on crypto exchanges, licensing regimes, CBDCs coming down the track, but blockchain in itself in pilots and proof of concept around land registry and other use cases.
Yeah,
that's the takeaway.
exactly.
Super, thank you. Eva, now I'm well, for the past 5 years, I've been walking around saying that custody is the Gordian knot of crypto and digital assets, and I've changed my tune. It's identity now. And identity actually seems to be the Gordian knot of crypto and digital assets, or certainly the blockchain from an identity perspective. And I think with all of the questions we have around how democracies function, voting rights, and what we see going on, can you give us an idea of what's going on in Europe in the context of voting systems and identity and what's coming together?
Actually, you were right in the beginning that we have not still identified that blockchain delivered all the promises we had. It can, the possibility is there, the technology is there, but still we don't have like solid applications that are super successful so that I can tell you, yeah, we have blockchain voting systems or identity on blockchain, but we are mature enough and we trust more the technology now in terms of like scalability, interoperability, and to ensure that it will not like completely fail us in the system to test such applications. So with teleworking and also potential lockdowns for an energy crisis scenario, we would need to explore how we can still vote online. So the voting system of the parliament during the lockdown was quite interesting. So you had to receive your ballot paper on your computer, print it, like vote, and then scan it, and then send it. Yeah, so I told them there are like blockchain solutions that you can have your mobile device and then it's like immutable, it's amazing, you can like instantly vote, and also you can keep it open for an hour and then shut it down if somebody wants to change their vote, and nobody can touch that, it's super secure. It takes time. I'm now trying, I became a vice president like as of January, and like one of the first things I suggested is we are ready to test internally some blockchain solutions for voting and then see if it works. I mean, we definitely need to be safe when we try that. If we can start using it. So people are more comfortable into discussing blockchain applications, although I have to admit there are circumstances, or like this Terra Luna thing or the Russian war, that creates more resistance still when you talk about the crypto. So we try to talk about the positive opportunities that crypto has. It would be nice to focus on that because we have like 90% are like nice stories, good opportunities, and then you have problems, and you also have like corruption. but we have to talk a bit more positive on that. And then one thing that I believe is missing to achieve more and use it more is to have a clear model of how it works, a clear presentation of how the application it's benefiting in terms of like value of like security, safety, transparency. So if we had that, we are ready to start testing. We invested a lot of money. We have the Horizon Europe program that tested blockchain to use it for humanitarian aid, for agriculture, like for several things, or for verification of your certificates for your diplomas. Not successful by design, the solution that was like presented, because also we need to test different players. So if you have such solutions or like applications, this is the time that we are starting like overcoming also the physical barriers and the geographical barriers. We have basically a digital single market at this point. Blockchain has great opportunities ahead.
Eva, just to clarify, because I love this. This is the idea that we're going to get politicians to drink their own blockchain Kool-Aid. And so what you've proposed is voting for MEPs or for the council or for both?
Any kind of voting, we have to start with simple procedures and just like test it first. But for everything, I think also at the national level, inside the parliament, even if you're physically there, because you need to be physically present, you can still use a blockchain application on a device in front of you to vote. So it's like more secure, more fast, and all the benefits that we can see there.
Oh, very cool. Daniela, I was struck speaking to Primavera de Filippo from Harvard, who really has a great use case for blockchain in governments, but it relies on an open public network. And her view is that really all aspects of licensing, anything that requires regulation or in essence an industry with agency relationship are excellent candidates for the public chain. Now, you're at the heart of all of this. Can you uncover to us what you think are the important use cases emerging for government and the public blockchain space?
Well, the Hyperledger Foundation, although we do have projects that sit in the public blockchain, we have been for the last 6 years working with governments, working with private sector, building distributed ledger technology that is on permission or public permissioned networks. For example, like the Sovereign Network, which is a digital identity network as well. So I can't really comment on the public blockchain elements of it, although we have seen more and more use cases with the use of Hyperledger Besu, which is an Ethereum execution client that is based on Ethereum as well. So we're starting to see, especially in Europe, there's been lots of adoption of Hyperledger Besu, as well as down in Latin America with LACchain, which is with the Inter-American Development Bank, where they're building a public permissioned blockchain network to be able to build digital identity solutions on it, supply chain solutions on top of that blockchain as well. So we're starting to see hybrid models on public and permissioned.
And is the open source nature of those, though, that I think from a governance perspective helps de-risk things. So in my community, and no disrespect to big tech companies, but you know, everybody speaking to execs says it's actually better having hundreds of developers in an open source community just for the statistical, you know, quality or error than a small number of developers working for a big tech corporation developing these use cases. And is that a sort of a key feature or a key component in the projects that you're seeing?
Sure. So, you know, from an open source perspective, it's like we've come a long way, baby. You know, government agencies and technology departments understand why open source. They understand how to use it. They understand how to get involved. And the most exciting thing that we've seen, at least in the Hyperledger Foundation over the last 2 years, two and a half years, 3 years, is actually having government employees, developers, engineers participating and contributing to the code bases. And also government agencies doing challenges, for example, where they're challenging the private sector and the startup ecosystem, right, where they find some new solutions to implement, and using open source to do that, right, putting in challenges to resolve specific requirements from a digital identity perspective, you know, making sure that the private sector is helping build the solutions that then they can ultimately deploy. So I think open source becomes critical, more critical as we go through. Just this morning, we announced an initiative with the Digital Dollar Project, FINOS, which is the Financial Services Open Source Consortium, that's a sister project at the Linux Foundation with Hyperledger. And Hyperledger to look at, from a CBDC perspective, which pieces and how can we use open source to elevate and to accelerate the discussions. We've been talking for 2+ years with central banks around the world, educating them and their technology departments on why open source and how open source. And I think ultimately it makes everybody in this room be able to engage with those government entities in a different way. So no longer just a vendor selling to the government, but as a partner working with the government to build solutions in the open, in an open governed way that they can institute and feel comfortable with.
And I want to pick out and point that out because I think that is hugely important. So right at the commencement of a project or life cycle, there's an engagement with government or agency in the open source development. It's not just the result of a downstream governance node. It's engaged in the program from the very beginning. So very exciting indeed. Jayesh, now you and the Hyderabad and Telangana government have been really focused on how you can position yourself to lead in this blockchain and DLT space. Can you tell us some of the interesting use cases that are coming out of your community?
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. So, in fact, I'd like to share something which will interest Eva as well. We actually, just a few months ago, demonstrated a full-blown scale solution of remote voting, home-based voting, and we were able to display that very, very successfully. It had roughly about, it's a medium-sized town close to Hyderabad, where we sampled roughly around 3,800 voters. And
in the public?
In the public.
Yeah.
It's not a controlled kind of an experiment. We asked public to volunteer and participate in this historic kind of a trial, the first ever use case of remote voting in India. And blockchain played a very important role. Actually, see, in India, normally, like in many other parts of the world, elections are very contentious kind of issues. There are two kinds of challenges that people make. One is about establishing identity. So, for example, if I'm claiming that I'm the voter, am I the right person or am I impersonating someone? So, first of all, we had to tackle that challenge, that how do you provide a very perfect kind of an identity solution while you are sitting at home. And the second one was how do you make the vote secure and intact, that it can't be tampered with, it can't be hacked, and so on and so forth. So that is where blockchain played a role. And we have now been able to, as I said, demonstrate it with a large sample. There's lots of interest by the National Election Authority, which is called the Election Commission of India. 2-3 other provinces in the country want to emulate this. So this is the latest achievement of ours that we have been able to showcase how, and hopefully when the next round of elections happen in India, we are planning to see lots of government employees are put on election duty. And normally what happens is that they miss out on voting or they follow some other procedure, which is not very efficient. It's cumbersome, like they apply for a postal ballot paper and then they kind of do it. So we are planning to introduce remote voting. Wherever I am, I can use my device and vote. So that is one very good example. But in our province, we have more than 15 very interesting use cases of a very diverse kind. So land records is one area where lots of governments, both in India as well as elsewhere, have shown their prowess in securing using blockchain. But we have found other very interesting use cases also. So for example, there are a large number of bottom of the pyramid women who participate in a savings program, which are called chit funds. So how do you secure the entire chain of savings which are being contributed by thousands of women at any given time? So prior to us introducing this blockchain intervention, everything was very non-transparent and prone to all kinds of mischief, etc. But after we have introduced that, we have been able to bring the entire messy system under lots of control. there are other very good examples. So Hyderabad, many of you may not know this, is one of the most important centers of pharmaceutical and vaccines manufacturing. In fact, this may surprise you when I tell this, that 1/3 of world's vaccines are manufactured in Hyderabad. Entire world produces 27 billion vaccines a year, of which 9 billion vaccines are produced in Hyderabad, including these COVID vaccines. Now, unfortunately, there have been lots of incidents in which fake vaccines or fake medicines have been introduced. So we have been able to utilize blockchain again in tracing the entire chain of vaccines from the time they're manufactured in a manufacturing unit till the time they come to the market and then to the consumer. So lots of very important challenges which governments typically faced in improving their delivery to the citizens, etc. We have been able to provide very good solutions using blockchain.
Excellent. And if we put aside the very noble effort in the pharma industry, it is actually identity now that you're bringing to the forefront in your use case. We're at Davos 2022. Isn't it great to be back in person? I know. I've missed all of you. I've missed actually doing these events, although my family life has been outstanding since I've been on Zoom. And my daughter is really pissed off that I'm here, but that's besides the point. Right, before we get into a second run of questions, and Sophie will be angry if I don't finish up at 5 minutes past, do we have any questions from the floor? Great. Do you want to just name, question?
Yes.
Krangu Tsalawa, I'm a Romanian now living in Lugano, in the city of Lugano. So looking at both European perspective and extra-EU perspective, I would like to highlight one point and ask you how you perceive that at the level of both the European Union, but also the other countries that are here present. And that is the role of blockchain to build communities. And the role of gluing, if you want to use an informal word, of gluing people together, making them more conscious that they are part of the same ecosystem. So giving back the word to what is actually originating from.
I'm sorry, what was the first question again, just so that I've got it?
How the blockchain may be used as a connectivity agent for the communities in
Great.
which it is used by the government.
Super. Excellent. Who wants to pick up that one? Eva.
Listen, it has great potential to do that. In the beginning, it was like the decentralization that blockchain was bringing that brought us all together, and I was like very excited for the potential, even just to start thinking outside the box and like beyond the traditional rules about the positive disruption. So yes, this could be a thing, but it would not come like top down. It has to start from the communities, and they need to be much stronger also into the way they talk about it, because I have to admit that the banking lobbying is much stronger than having meetings here in Davos, or than the effort that the community has about, you know, the possibilities and the potential of blockchain. I think we're kind of like stuck into the fintech, which still can provide great potential, but we don't talk about the positive things, like that a person that doesn't have a bank account can actually start using, has become part of the financial sector, and he can send money to his family without having to pay like 20% of fees. So we have not spoke enough about the positive aspects of the technology, maybe because now we're realizing the potential of its technology. We overcame some problems. I mentioned before scalability and interoperability, privacy issues. But I think we managed to have a European approach, good and bad, like the DLT about tokens, tokenization of traditional assets, which is, I think, good. I was working on the file, so I say it's good. We managed to avoid to have banning of proof of work, because we need to remain tech neutral. We need to be able to evaluate what is the real environmental impact, but also to compare with what we used to do before. So it's not fair to just like talk about one transaction. If it used to take 1 week, maybe the environmental impact is actually better, even if it's proof of work. So we need to mature, we need to have like concrete examples, and then we need to ensure that it's realized the potential and the benefit for citizens. This needs to be clear. So I met many people that they are also here, and they explain how they achieve like solutions with blockchain. but you really need to pitch better, like say, this is the value for the citizens, this is why you should use this app and not the traditional one, this is why the banking system failed and we are better. So we need to inspire also people to feel that this is an option and a solution for them that would make their lives better. And then, yes, I think this would empower communities to come like on board and talk about blockchain for good. That excited us.
Well, that's fantastic. Absolutely, but I'm going to make you work. It has to be a question to someone else on the panel that isn't Eva. Excellent.
Whoever wants to take it. I'm Mihaela Uliero, so my question is, just taking on from what you mentioned about financial inclusion, social innovation, environmental projects. So who should pay, or who has the accountability for such projects? The companies, the government? Is the government doing too little, too late in that regard? At least maybe.
So, great question. So, let me set a little bit of context about Indian governance system. So, we have a federal government, but we also have provincial governments. So, as I introduced myself, I work for a provincial government in the southern part of India. So, provincial governments in India have fairly large amount of autonomy. Within the national frameworks, etc., they can choose their own priority. They can decide how they want to work. So in my province of Hyderabad, we are very clear that any kind of pain point which citizens face, if there is a technology which can provide solution to that pain point, we must get it from wherever it is possible to get. So all the work that we do, including blockchain and other emerging technologies, it is all done using multiple stakeholders. So when I said that the government did this remote voting solution or government did this financial inclusion solution, it's not that we created that solution. We facilitated that. So what we have done is we have created a platform in Hyderabad which is called blockchain district. And the blockchain district actually has multiple members. Yeah. So of course, the initiative has come from the government, but we have chosen multiple partners to join hands with us. So this includes academic institutions. Hyderabad is the home to some of the best academic institutions in the country. We also have a few federal agencies who have participated in this program. There are many technology companies who have strong blockchain practices. So they have joined hands with us. And of course, lots of transformative work is happening with startups these days, as you must be aware. So lots of startups are members. So whenever we choose to work on a problem, the entire district is made aware that this is the problem we are working on. And whoever is able to kind of show to us that they have the entire end-to-end solution and it is deployable, then we choose to work with them. So that is the model. And just to add a little, you asked about I guess more specifically about who funds all these initiatives. So it is definitely government funding. Most of the projects are run using government funding because for two reasons. One is we are able to make the functioning of some government agency more efficient. And obviously in the longer run, they help, that solution helps in saving costs for them or improving citizen satisfaction. So there is a very positive justification on why government should support and fund those kind of projects.
Well, and often I think Primavera de Filippo would be putting forth a model that says the incentives of not just getting agencies but industry engaged in government use cases helps much better with private-public funding, depending on the specific use case of the application. Any other questions? Aha. Okay. Has to go to someone on the panel that hasn't had a question.
It's an open question. Okay. I'm very curious from where you sit or where you stand. What do you think is the one biggest blunder we've made as an industry that you wish we hadn't made to make your life easier?
What's the one biggest blunder, which is a very polite word, that the industry has made that from a government perspective, folks wish we haven't because it makes it an increasing barrier to adoption, more difficult for governments. There's more of a bias in making decisions about blockchain. I don't know if anyone wants to take that one.
I'll tell you my personal opinion, John.
Perfect.
I think making blockchain sexy, right, and making it a thing rather than a technology that fixes problems, and obviously not very early on being able to describe the difference between blockchain and cryptocurrencies. I think what we saw in 2017, with the ICO market craze, took us back a little bit. I'm hoping that what we've seen in the last 2 weeks won't take us that far back again. But so I think so I joke about saying making blockchain sexy, but not chasing those those big visions and really not defining the blockchain technologies, distributed ledger technologies, the work that's being done in the space and has been for a long time, and just equating blockchain with Bitcoin, as I say, but on the crypto side.
Jayesh, do you have a quick...
Yeah, very quick addition to what you asked. So I remember in the 90s, there used to be a big dread, which is called vendor lock-in. Like you invest a lot in some technology, and you find that you are just locked in by that vendor. Whenever some upgrades are required, you pay heavily, etc. So Daniela spoke about open source and interoperable, etc. While we would like that environment to prevail, we don't see too much of support from the industries towards that. And if the industry doesn't really support in encouraging interoperable, open source, etc., the same kind of antipathy that we used to see big tech in the 80s, etc., the same will possibly come true for the blockchain world as well.
Now, I need you to really think and focus, because I need the last question on my current favorite topic of Web3 and the metaverse and its relationship to blockchain, which will go to Kairat. Yeah? Excellent.
So my question is for Ms. Kaili. You mentioned that You mentioned that successful repealing of banning proof of work was beneficial for blockchain and technology as such. How is repealing of non-custodial wallets beneficial in the same way?
She could follow that.
Yes, and then we can pick up.
Ask the question
She
again.
could follow that. She didn't follow that.
The question was, what's the impact of the non-custodial wallet?
Yeah. So still, this is under negotiations. We're not done yet. But I mean, it's the privacy argument has not been strong enough. We need to explain that it gives possibilities to the unbanked to use it, because the arguments of like market integrity, user friendly and trusted applications, financial stability, they appear stronger, and we didn't present enough use cases. For me, it was the lockdown that I couldn't approach like my colleagues. I was not working directly on the file, and so when I realized what was going on, I tried like to educate and talk about the benefits and why we should not go there. I'm still trying. But that's why I said, like, instead of over-promising any solution can happen on blockchain, to like explain why it's an amazing technology for tax collection. Maybe we don't like it, but it can be used for that. So talk about the real solutions, present them, and then ensure that like you talk to politicians, because these things can happen by accident, just because like 2 people in my committee should have changed their minds, just 2. And things would have been different for the whole Europe, which is like 500 million of people and citizens, and the ecosystem will be affected. Hopefully it can be revised. We are waiting for the trilogue, and then the French Council. So the French, they try to have a French solution for Europe. So you can influence, them, like talk about what it can succeed and why it's important. Not because of privacy, it's because it offers solutions for citizens. So we have to explain better what are the real solutions of blockchain. And I'm struggling, but you're like experts, you understand the technology, you understand its potential, you've tested it, you know when it fails. Let's stick to these projects like property registries, identity, to be able to have like common standards for the market on several cases. So how can we use blockchain? And then we will start to have more successes, and we don't have to constantly be worried about somebody trying to block it. I talked about banning proof of work, and then in the end, we are all realizing that it needs to be proof of stake sooner or later for most of the transactions, at least payments. that would survive and it's sustainable. So we have to be also realistic.
Well, and good question and good answer. And just in the context of the U.S. infrastructure bill and the way tax has gone in the U.S.
Sorry, you wanted to like...
Yeah, I've got one more question for you. Yeah,
Only.
excellent. And just the way that tax has gone with the U.S. Infrastructure bill with unhosted wallets, as somebody that's in the advocacy space, there's a lot more work for us to do in helping parliamentarians make these decisions. And Kairat, I thought the last question for you had to be around where Web3 and the metaverse is going, and particularly what you folks are up to in the context of where blockchain meets the metaverse.
Yes,
and
thanks
Web3.
for these questions concerning metaverse, because I wanted to answer for several questions and end up it with metaverse, because it comes to the to metaverse at all, because it's interface which is changing a way of interactions between people, etc. First of all, I think that first question is brilliant, because it reflects the expectations of public general from blockchain, that blockchain will like revolutionize everything, etc. by itself. But it's just a technology, and we have to. We can't expect like more than just a technology. It depends how we use it. And here I think that we see that business is most active how it should be. First of all, business trying to popularize it, and we see that it's happening now. Then people trying to demand, and then government reflects. We see it in all technologies. Probably everybody here has mobile banking, for example. So it is a technology, and first of all, it started with like website, now it's app, etc. Probably many of you have e-government app and interacting with your government. So it's government reflecting, and probably government is too slow understanding, and first of all understanding, and second realizing that they should use it to interact with people. And probably government should be a little bit slow and use trusted technology which have already been popularized. And what we see now, that it's not about blockchain only. So we see that from different sides of our life, blockchain comes to our reality. And metaverse, we see that many companies, many big companies is going to metaverse, because it's a different way of interacting between people. And of course, most of them will be connected to blockchain, because it's for up to now, it's more trusted technology. We see that DAO as a technology is growing up, and probably our like people most of the people are ready to interact in self-organized structures without government involving. And I think that it's okay, but the second question was, what's your like kind of dream? But I think that government, my dream, because I'm kind of between government and business, I see that government reacts too slow, and my dream is is the government to understand it fastly and trust to blockchain technology. And I think that it can change a lot, because now we see that CBDCs using by central bank, it's a good sign. It means that government accept blockchain and see that Bitcoin, for example, become very popular, and it has to do something with it. And it brings a lot of risk, of course, but from another side, it brings a lot of opportunities. For example, colored tokens and other solutions, distributed trust, etc., voting. Everything will be used in metaverse. And we see, I know several projects, for example, which have already started develop services for metaverses. I mean, I don't know like complete metaverse working and popular, but the business around metaverse have already started, and most of them are based on blockchain. So we see where it's heading. And I think that it will be popular, and government will have no choice but implement blockchain into our lives. Okay.
Excuse me.
I'm glad you agree with me.
Wow, it's a great consensus for the government being in the metaverse.
Yeah.
It's come through very clearly in this consensus session.
And also, I just want to add that one of the biggest barrier for metaverse developing is an equipment, devices, etc. Now it's a little bit complicated and uncomfortable. But if you follow news in this field, recently you can read the news where one man he's managing sport car with a chip integrated in his mind.
I hope we don't get there.
I mean, it just shows where we're heading. It's probably it's not a chip integrated, but it's a new way of like a mouse. It's a new way of managing and integrate.
I'm with Eva on this one.
Yeah, let's not get there. I hope we don't.
Yeah, we're into dangerous territory, which sounds like we must shut this panel down. But I hope that we've moved you along in helping to unlock blockchain and what's going on in its use case for governments. A big round of applause for our panel. And then thanks to all of you very much for patiently listening and asking the great questions.